Well, we certainly do have a lot of stories about modding. Last time it was City Skylines 2, a game where essentially, for a lot of people, the modders would almost be required for that game to be a good experience. Here, though, it's really the other end of things. It's Larian, it's Baldur's Gate 3. Here's a quote. "All we ask is that if you do love us, then please talk to us." This is a line from an open letter that was sent to Larian by the modders of Baldur's Gate 3. Of course, Baldur's Gate 3, probably the most prominent game of 2023, one of them anyway, but it's a game that's absolutely humongous. It has been successful, I think, beyond what anybody actually expected. And now the developers are left with a bit of a challenge. They've got to face the demands of players, modders, of course, their own development timelines, plans for their own company. But what they're trying to do here is to step up and actually tell people what's the deal, because they have actually responded. As for me, though, well, I haven't stepped up to make a slick segue for you, but here's to the crew helping pay our bills, today's sponsor. There ain't a sponsor, but you can still help us. Hitting the subscribe button essentially gives the algorithm a happy signal. It would really help me out if you subscribe to the channel. Most of our viewers actually aren't subscribed. It's just part of how YouTube works these days. But that gives the algorithm a happy signal, and that means it'll spread our content to more people, and that really helps. Same with the like button. Those things actually do make a dent. They're a great zero-cost way to support the show. It'll take 3 seconds, maybe 5. My end of the bargain, of course, is I will bring my A-game to this show, and I'll also bring my A-game to supporting the team behind this show as best I can, so that we can bring you the best news, the best research. That's our ambition. Thank you for your support, and let's go. Okay, first a bit of a quick health check-in. Baldur's Gate 3 has been rather successful. They've got over 10 million players, over 500,000 Steam reviews, and now they found themselves with a fairly angry modding community. And as much as you could look at player counts and make some sort of clickbait headline that 90% of players have gone, well, you look here, right, and you see, like 10 minutes ago, 24-hour peak, right, 121k. 10 minutes ago, 81k, all-time peak, of course, just shy of a mil. So technically, yes, the number has fallen, but, that's obviously a load of bollocks. This is incredibly successful for a game like this. And of course, when you got that many players, that also means, well, that might impact some of your future plans. You may have to rejig some things. It also means that if there is a bug, people are going to find it because you have a truly gargantuan number of people playtesting every bit of your game. So in the same way that, we've had headlines from PC Gamer about people doing, a whole run of Baldur's Gate 3 by throwing cats at people or something, in the way that the game supports that many edge cases, well, the same obviously will apply to one's ability to find bugs. And that actually is a similarity between this and our other modding story this week with City Skylines 2. They are both hyper complex games, right? Like, just think of the permutations, right? The number of things that can go wrong. Really the sort of thing the developers will often call an unknown unknown. And you might think, well, Michael, what do you mean a known unknown? Or, like something like that. Well, it's just, you know that that's probably where a bug is going to be. So it'll be easy enough to find. But when a game is that complex, well, a bug can really pop up anywhere because it's, well, just so damn complex that I suppose unless you yourself happen to be a large language model, you just can't parse all of it at once. In both cases, you're dealing with a fundamental type of game that is pretty much the hardest to robustly test and polish you could possibly get. What's happened is, every time there's been a major update, a whole bunch of mods have broke. Now, in a way, that is kind of expected, right? An update changes things that mods took as given, and then they break. The thing is, though, these are fairly necessary updates, and they've been pretty highly covered. There's the most obvious things with the epilogues that they added afterwards, right, after fan requests, but even when you see just regular updates, they are knocking out, in many cases, hundreds and hundreds of bugs, and they're updating parts of the game based on community feedback. That's very high-value activity. They absolutely need to do it, but the problem is that doing so often breaks mods. And what sparked today's story is that now, 6 months on from release, a specific change within the last update caused a problem. It didn't cause a problem for any old mod, though. It caused a problem for the script extender. Now, the script extender basically was required for really the majority of complex mods that existed for this game. And to basically understand it, right, a script extender, like, yes, it's a mod, but really it is tools and stuff for other mod makers to build on top of. It's a foundational sort of mod. If you've ever played a lot of the Bethesda games, like say Skyrim, you'll probably have downloaded the Skyrim script extender. That's an example of the type of mod we're dealing with here. Let's talk about the state of mods with Baldur's Gate 3 and Larian's prior work. Baldur's Gate 3 currently does not support official modding through official tools, right? There is no modding for Baldur's Gate 3 using tools provided by Larian. But of course, there are mods made with community tools, people just kind of going in the old-fashioned way. This is the sort of thing that, of course, is, by its very nature, not officially supported from Larian or really from any other company in a similar position to Larian here, because it's not the official mod tools. That's why the official mod tools matter, because by virtue of being official, they basically come with a certain bar of quality and also a sort of bar of quality of ongoing service and fixes. So what happened here, though, is the script extender broke. That had a cascading effect that essentially broke the majority of complex mods for Baldur's Gate 3. So for the sake of many modders, well, essentially they saw all of their work, as they would maybe put it, kind of be wasted, right? Because they're consistently needing to update their implementation based on Larian randomly dropping patches, or perhaps hotfixes to fix issues that may have arisen from a patch. This is obviously not a stable environment for modding, which is why it's not officially supported. But as a result, right, look, people can do it. There's a demand for it. It's going to happen. We've got to be pragmatic. We've got to be realists. And as always, we've got frustrated people, and that's led to some very constructive action. A lot of people being very reasonable about it because, look, it's Larian. They like the game. They want things to be successful. I suppose you could say for some, maybe they feel a bit entitled to official mod tools, earlier, and maybe some actions from some people in the community could cross a line. But it's pretty unfair to judge an entire community by the actions of the most angry people in it. Even though they may be the most angry or the most loud or the most visible, that does not by any means mean that generally speaking that's how people are. Basically, trying to take a more constructive angle in this, many of the most prominent modders in the unofficial modding community, particularly in the Larian Discord, basically realized that they should band together and try to get some legitimacy for their complaints. And to do this, they wrote an open letter to Larian. So let's just go through the open letter. Number one, they actually do accept that patches will break mods. They're not particularly angry about that. They know why it's going to happen, and that makes a lot of sense. Modders, I mean, inherently you're dealing with technical people who will basically know how the game is played. What they do not accept, though, is the standard of communication from Larian. They're basically framing it as they love the game, they're doing unpaid contributions to the community, that's something that brings value to the community, and obviously it's something that Larian then benefits a hell of a lot from. And it's something Larian have benefited from. The past Divinity 2, of course, has got plenty of modding. They did eventually stop modding engine updates, which actually did impact the ability of some modders to work. So that's some of the background that we're dealing with here. But basically, they're also saying that they want to extend the lifespan of this game to functionally be endless, right? That's obviously, if you're a member of the community, that's the dream. You just buy Baldur's Gate 3, and within that framework, you can get near infinite amounts of content via modders. That's amazing. Now, the funny thing is, in terms of demand there, under 40% of Steam players have actually finished Act 2, according to the achievements, which, of course, in many ways just tells us how big Act 1 is. So really, so far, these are fair things for them to have said. These are people choosing to contribute to a community. They're not asking for any monetary rewards here. Equally, they know that the modding that they're doing right now is not officially supported, and that kind of leaves them in this like liminal space that doesn't really help anyone, because if you're to be, again, a realist, a pragmatist, people want mods. Even without official tools, people can make mods. And while I would have a gut reaction to say, you're barking up the wrong tree, this is literally unofficial, why are you basically asking Larian to play around you when you're not even using official modding tools, brackets because they're not there? That's maybe a gut reaction I could have. But the thing is, thinking about it more, I suppose, holistically, this is a real problem. Those are modders who care about the game. People want the modded content, and what Larian is doing is obviously having an impact on that. And it's not like they're necessarily asking Larian to change their plans. It seems that they're really just asking for more communication. And that's the bit that's different. They're wanting communication, but more communication than an average player would get just by being a customer. They do see themselves as being people who are adding value to that community, who are adding value to Larian themselves, and I think they just do expect that they should probably be getting just a bit more communication from the company. Now, you could certainly see from the perspective perspective of Larian that might be an annoying problem. Even if so, it's a real problem that they're actually facing, so they do need to deal with it. From the side of the modders, though, I mean, actually, I think you can kind of understand that. Like, if you're literally benefiting from people's work as a sort of thing that's just, going on, and if you as the company haven't taken efforts to just stop it, well, if you're letting it go on and you're benefiting from it, then I do actually think it opens the way for, maybe you having more communication with the modders. I think in many cases for the modders, they're kind of saying, look, how hard would it be if you've got a patch coming up to just sort of tell us what's going on? Of course, Larian might be thinking, okay, who writes the patch notes? There's so many things in the patch, so many different developers, so many stakeholders within the company, all just up and down the chain. How do you effectively get that communication out in a way that is agile enough to not scupper the plans of modders? So that's the thing, where organizationally in a company like that, it's actually pretty damn hard to do that sort of thing in a way that properly feels official. So yes, the modders want an official communication channel with Larian, of course, before the official modding tools come out. They want a clear statement on the status of mod support on a regular basis. So they want to know when these tools are coming, what are the blockers, how is it being developed, and they want better moderation of the Larian Discord that to them they basically feel is the actual home of the modding community. So that's basically what's been going on there. Now, this is made a bit more complex because Larian have actually made their position on modding pretty clear before launch. This is what they said. We loved what our modding community did with Divinity Original Sin 2, and we're excited to see what they'll do with Baldur's Gate 3. Modding is not currently supported, but will be at a later date. Whenever a company like that says supported in an official sense, we might take that in a more casual way. Does the company support that or not? When they say that, they're basically saying it's not officially supported, as in, we're not going to be putting customer service time into it. We're not going to be putting QA and engineering time into it because it's not yet officially supported. That's basically the point of having the official mod tools. So you can see it from Larian's perspective. Of course, for the modders, I mean, yeah, they got that statement to go off from before the game launched. What they want is more communication, more detail, and an understanding of timeline. Now, on that, we can go to some statements from the CEO of Larian in the Dropped Frames podcast. He was basically asked about the addition of a Games Master toolset to allow people to run their own D&D games with inside Baldur's Gate 3 in a similar way to what they could do in Divinity Original Sin 2. Which, just as an aside, awesome thing to be able to do. The game actually allows people to build custom campaigns and maps and just play through them. Now, not in Baldur's Gate 3, though, we learned, because of the complexity of the toolset to actually make the game. So eventually the modding will be there. It will allow for some of the same functionality, but not really the full, user-generated campaign stuff that we saw with Divinity Original Sin 2. Here's what Sven said. We will support modding, so after the release there will be a lot of support coming, not right away because we're focused on finishing the game right now, but it still will be quite a challenge to do so. Of course, any of those statements or plans made before launch will not be made with knowledge of how successful the game would go on to be. And certainly, the more success you have, the more players you have, the more bugs get generated, the more bug reports exist. That probably means you're going to spend more time fixing bugs than you anticipated, because the sheer volume of bug reports is going to be way higher because you literally just have more players, and I imagine that will impact plans. So if they were to say, okay, 6 months after launch, we'll drop the mod tools, but then the launch is way more successful than they thought, well, actually, it might then be quite a bit more of a challenge to make those mod tools in time, because those same folks may end up having to do other things to triage a game being far more successful than really anyone seems to have thought. To keep the story going, though, let's go back to Divinity Original Sin 2. It had modding tools on PC the day after the official Steam release, and the team at Larian actually gathered up many of the most popular mods, and they brought them to consoles for free, which is an absolutely killer move. That is a fantastic thing to do. Obviously, though, that's setting a very, very high bar for expectation, right? Now, in that case, it's Divinity Original Sin 2. It is the direct sequel to the previous Divinity Original Sin game. You could certainly say that there would be a level of, I suppose, maturity and familiarity with their tools and processes that would allow them to do that. Obviously, Baldur's Gate 3, while it has so much DNA and lineage with those games, it is a different beast, by virtue of scale, detail, complexity. So these high expectations are much harder to uphold, to meet with a game like Baldur's Gate 3. And it puts Larian in a tough position because they know that they did the really good thing in the past, and they probably want to do the really good thing now. The problem is there are likely real technical reasons that are blocking the official mod support, which means that at a surface level they appear to be under-delivering compared to their past, even though when you look at the big picture context, they are sort of different situations. Now, of course, overall, official modding support has never been in doubt. The thing that's been up in the air is just timing, and that basically means the void of information is not great. Fortunately, though, that's actually changed. We've got some statements from their director of publishing, so let's get into that. I'll just read what he said. We'll be talking in depth about what mod support will look like soon. We've been working on it since launch. As always, we'll discuss it, in our way with the community. Threats and toxicity against our devs and community teams will only harm the conversation. Please stop that. This is a game that went from 2 million players to way over 10 in a very short space of time, so it's natural the conversation becomes muddier and complex, but in order to maintain the same level of dialogue, we need people to understand that these conversations take time. We can't do it at all without the dedicated community teams that work to untangle a giant web of noise into something we can work on for the benefit of everyone. If you truly want to know things about the game, please don't chip away at the people who connect us all. 99.9% of our community are the absolute best, and it's because of them, thankfully, that my team perseveres. But I suppose it was inevitable that when you have a city, a few bad eggs will start a fire. He goes on to say that until then, the game does not yet have mod support. Don't get angry at mod authors, because you actually have situations where a user of a mod could be flaming a mod author, but ultimately that's because the mod author's mod uses script extender, which, the breaking of which is downstream of a patch or hotfix from Larian. Anyway, he goes on to say that support teams, community, or developers, our focus is to patch the game while working on future mod support. I understand why it's frustrating, so what we all need to do is focus on the future. He goes on to talk about their comms team basically meeting up to work out a sort of communication strategy for all of this, but just says, we're working too hard for this to proliferate. Of course, the Spider-Man meme is endless. It lives forever. He finishes, though, by saying, we can only be close if we can work close. If we cannot do that, and we have to draw distance, it'll really suck for everyone, especially us, definitely you. Please help us work for the greater good of the millions of people who are involved, and chill. Quite a statement. It's one of those ones I would say firm but fair. I think the bit that's important there is that's clearly not bullshit, because there's going to be some words there that will piss people off. So I think the willingness to have some words that maybe would piss some people off does kind of mean that it's actually a legit statement, and I'd always rather that than just being bullshitted. So I think basically the point from his perspective, from Larian's perspective, is that until the support comes out, everybody working on mods for the game has been choosing to do so for a game that does not yet officially support those mods, and that does not have a public pipeline for official support. So there are frustrations with the fact that these patches are breaking mods, and that at the time Larian wasn't talking with them, but in a way, the most root problem here is that they've been working to a different schedule from the people who are actually making the game, and obviously they're not doing that from some, monetary reason or, something bad. They're just doing it because they're really passionate about the game. So yeah, basically I think Larry needs to hold the line, be very clear about what's going on, but try to triage the situation by, say, looking at the really big mods out there that actually impacts their community, and just trying to be a bit pragmatic in the short term. There you go. Yeah, it's always tricky, right? Whenever we have sort of internal explosions with games. This is not the most major one, but it is a very big game, and that does mean that it feels quite large. But this is fundamentally far less existential than the situation we had with City Skylines 2, because City Skylines 2 without mods is kind of screwed. Baldur's Gate 3 without mods is still one of the best games of the decade so far. So, it's kind of a different situation. Anyway, let me know what you think about this one. And I suppose that's it for me. I'll see you in the next video. So, yeah, see you over there. And goodbye.